What's up, world? It's September 10th. This is the motor for the 240Z I posted last week, the number 35. This is a motor Joel assembled. I'm gonna go through and kind of show the parts, probably try to show the displacement and just kind of like put that out there and all the stuff surrounding the motor, why I use the parts I use, and kind of explain why you wouldn't overbuild certain aspects of the car. I feel like a lot of people who road race vintage 240Zs now way overbuild the cars, or they're not prepared correctly, or it's a combination of bad parts and bad preparation and not taking the time to test the cars. So I'm gonna turn the camera around and we're gonna look at all these parts and I'm gonna kind of explain, and hopefully a lot of this stuff makes sense. Okay, so here is the 50 millimeter Bicunis I was talking about in the last video. This is gonna be an induction we're gonna run on this thing. These are probably a little too big for the 2.4 liter, but what it allows you to do is kind of choke them down and play with jetting, and you can do a lot of stuff on the dyno at these. These are really good, very linear, good stuff. HKS, short runner manifold, not really a fan of that. Would like a long runner for 2.4, but we'll kind of let the dyno do the talking there when we get to that point. It's already port matched to the cylinder head that's on the motor, so we're gonna leave that and just kind of run with that first trial effort. This is the header we're using. This was a spare that we had at the shop. I welded these V-bands on there. It's a split system, so we'll actually run a true dual like they would have back in the day. I don't know how long a header is gonna last. It's kind of thin. I think I might have already said that, but we're gonna run that for right now. I like to get one of those Japanese competition style headers that float around on like Yahoo Japan auction pretty regularly. They're just stainless steel. We'll see what we do with that. Maybe I'll make one, I don't know. This is the clutch and pressure plate that I'm gonna be running, and flywheel. I believe it's a Tilton flywheel with like a removable friction ring. So it's completely aluminum. ARP bolts, those work really good. The factory ones work okay, but you know, kind of is what it is. Just safety when you're revving stuff super high. I left these out. This is the oil pump drive gear. We run a bronze drive gear for all of our motors, not a steel one, because those like to explode at high RPM. These seem to stay together, really cool. I have these out as spares to kind of mock up the timing on that motor. We're gonna run a 60 amp alternator, one wire. Those work really good. They're pretty easy to replace. We modify the mount so it's a single bolt, so you're not having to play with it. And it'll have a Heim joint, so it's super easy to adjust and all that good stuff. ZX gear reduction starter, gotta have that for high compression. Those motors don't like a hot start, 14.0, it's not good. So need that starter for sure. Can't use a stock normal starter. And then the oil pump is a OEM Nissan aluminum housing pump. I feel like you can get a steel housing pump from like a 280ZX or something that's a little bit newer. I'm saying a lot, but that should work for our endeavors. Had really good luck with those. Again, that is an OEM part, not a remanufactured one. That's from Nissan. And moving on to the oil pan. This is something my dad kind of took on a few years ago as a fun project for him and Joel. They redesigned the Datsun competition oil pan, which I think like maybe somebody like DP Racing may still be making. But those guys, the lead times are a long time, and it's hard to find one that's not all beat up or already been raced. So they went out of their way and created this design, changed the baffles, changed the windage tray, changed the sump area. And then if you've had a competition oil pan, you know you have to cut the pan. This one's already moved over, so you don't have to do it. And you still keep the existing capacity of 10.5 quarts. It's got a nice magnetic drain plug, can also have plenty of space for any sort of temperature sensors or any sort of logging stuff you'd want to put in the oil, whatever. So moving on to the motor, I got this thing rolled over. It is a 85 millimeter piston. It is a JE pop-up piston. I'm gonna try to shine a light down in there, maybe at the end of the video so you can see. But that part number on there, let me see if I can zoom in. Oh wow, that's really good. Yeah. There it is. That's the part number, the full moon. So if you want to look those up, you can. Those are 85 millimeter. There's the rod part number right there too. Those are Carrillo rods. good stuff, ARP hardware. Joel didn't like running ARP main stud kit. It was hard to pull the mains out when you go to service these things at about 40 hours. So we found this company that makes a knurled bolt with like a shoulder that you can like retorque a bunch, and we've spun a bunch of motors past 8 grand with those. So that works pretty good. So that's the motor. Nothing really too special. I'm gonna have to pause and rotate the motor up because I can't do that while I'm on the camera. So let me do that real quick. And all right, so I got the motor rolled over. Now I'm out of breath. But this cylinder head is old. It is an old Girolami, BC Girolami cylinder head. Very neat. That's the job number for it. 26 years old. I'm sure this thing is well over my age. And I'm gonna do a little flip here so you can see the part number. There you go. Boom. Really cool stuff. I was wrong on the last video. It's actually an Elgin cam. Guy in Austin named Dick Reed rolled the cam on a Cam Doctor for this thing, and they got the cam timing set up. I'm pretty sure, if I recall, this has been a little over a year ago. They actually drill the cam gear like a small block Chevy or small block Ford would have, with like these offset eccentrics, so you can fine tune the cam retardation or advancement off of like an offset eccentric. That's kind of a neat little trick for little finite adjustments when you're really trying to get the thing cranked in. But very simple valve train setups, like OEM spray bar. I think that's probably been reworked or something like that. And then it's got a spring kit, some kind of dual spring kit. I don't remember who that's from, but good stuff. You can kind of see there's been weight taken off all the rocker arms. That's all pretty normal stuff. But that is it for that. I'm gonna show you guys the part number on the block just in case anybody's looking for this later on. L24 2.4 liter. Sorry, my hands are dirty. That's the part number. People will shave these numbers off, or remanufactured blocks won't have those numbers on it. Or most likely it's just been shaved off. I don't know why people do that. That's dumb. Also, this head's an E31. You can see it hasn't been cut a whole lot because there's a lot of space underneath the E31. But very simple, very simple setup. No crazy adjustable gear. If you get this thing timed right with a big degree wheel and stuff, they're really straightforward. So I've got to put the drive gear back in for the distributor and the oil pump, prime the oil pump, get it together. Joel had this thing pinned at TDC for me, so it didn't move in any of the moving or any stuff like that. So I was able to get it right back to where they set it up at pretty easily. So I will get this thing together. The next video, I'll probably put it in the car and do all kind of cool stuff and kind of show around the shop and all that. But I'm gonna turn the camera around. I'm gonna talk to the camera about what I think about people doing these motors and all that stuff, and we'll finish it up with that. Okay, so another thing I missed on the motor was we use a Nissan OEM head gasket, and then the block actually is O-ringed on the crush rings. So there's, I can't remember if it's stainless wire. I forget what the machine shop we use, but the block is O-ringed. We also use factory head studs as well, or head bolts, sorry. Another thing, Joel hated lifting the thing off of ARPs. It's kind of a pain by yourself. Again, I've seen blocks that are O-ringed with like stock head bolts go. I'm gonna be honest, I personally drove a car of ours at 260 degrees water temp for about 2 laps, really beating on it, and I didn't lift the head. So sorry, Dad, but that happened. Yeah, so kind of what I want to end this on is vintage racing is really fun, and I think just like anybody who wants to win will always do what it takes to have like the best stuff or the fastest stuff. And what a lot of guys will do is they'll overbuild these motors. They'll put a big cam in these things, like bigger than 298, like a 306. And these things are like a light switch. If you ever driven like turbocharged cars that are really peaky, they have about 2,500 RPM power band, and they just come on super fast, but it is dead off the power. So it's really important for the gearing to match and the driver be confident, and as well as the differential and transmission matching where you're racing at. A lot of people that race vintage, they really don't want to mess with the car per each track. Your best results are gonna be, doing the math on the mile an hour, the average mile an hour of the track, or knowing the mile an hour of where you're at and matching the gearing. And so many people try to just drive around that. And these motors just really don't do that. A 2.4 doesn't do that. For a while, there was a lot of 2.75 motors running around. Those things pull up on the cam, super aggressive. I honestly have no idea how people weren't murdering people with those. They were awesome. I'm probably not allowed to say that, but I don't know how they weren't just absolutely destroying people with the 2.75 motor. They are really, really aggressive. Just super torquey. Doesn't even sound like this motor. So what ends up happening is they'll spend, you know, $10, $12, $15,000 on an engine and induction, and then they'll use like $500 DX transmission and think, oh, like I'm gonna go beat everybody. And the reality is you really can't do that. You have to put a good transmission in the thing, be a good driver, be testing the car and changing gearing per track. And I think so many people think like, oh man, it's not that big of a deal and all that stuff. It really is. So all those things need to be combined. Like I said in the beginning of the video, you know, you really have to take the time to test and know what the car is going to do and really do your math. So it does you no good to make, you know, 325 or 330 horsepower from a 2.4 liter, but it makes it for 2,000 RPM and your transmission doesn't support that because the drop off is so catastrophically large that it gets off the cam and you're stuck in the mud. So these motors, if you get the cam timing right and you get the gearing right, they're awesome. They pull super hard, and you just have to know your parts and know what you're doing and really prepare to drive the car. They are not easy to drive when they're set up. I take that back. If you're driving the car, they're easy to drive. If you're driving the car a lot. If you're not, you can't just expect to jump in a car that doesn't have any power assist or really any sort of electronics or any sort of like, you know, it's not crank fire ignition, so the timing is only advancing twice. It's a linear ignition. It's pretty smooth when it comes on. The fuel delivery, if it's tuned right, should work. But you're totally stuck in the mud if you don't do the gearing part. So if you're not spending your money there, you might as well just put a warmed over street motor. You can just push the gas in and leave it in third gear. So, or whatever gear, second, doesn't matter. I don't know, fourth, fifth, overdrive, doesn't matter. You're not gonna have really good success with that. So I think a lot of people really need to take a step back and try to maybe detune the car in a way to where it's more drivable and can run the whole weekend, and really just like, you know, go enjoy the weekend and not being trying to crush other people. The car that's a competitor in the class is a 2-liter 6-cylinder Porsche, you know, 911S Porsche. Honestly, 914-6 is probably the hot shoe car. I think they can run a bigger motor. I don't know that, but you have bigger displacement. They make more power. They have more homologated gears. There's really no reason the 240Z shouldn't be able to compete with that. But those guys that have the P cars, they have well-prepared stuff, and their cars are always geared right. They're very linear, and they're not super peaky like these. But if you get this right, this makes a lot of power. So it's kind of a double-edged sword of like really spending the money to know what you have, spending the money to test the car, and being, you know, present when you need to be present on track and being smart. So on that note, I'm gonna end the video on that. I think that's good. It is late. I drove around all over Texas today, came back to finish this up. So until the next one, like I said in the previous clip, I will install the motor and then kind of just do some talking about what's going on. And then I think probably get the exhaust mocked up. I think I have enough material to get most of that done. We're gonna put cones on it, like trumpets kind of a deal. It's gonna be a dual exhaust. Not sure if I'm gonna keep the fuel cell in the car. Might change it for a smaller cell so we have space, but more to follow. So thanks guys, and please enjoy.